I'm Editor-in-Chief of IEEE Software, Forrest Shull, and I'm here today talking with Girish Seshagiri, who's the CEO of Advanced Information Services Incorporated. So welcome, Girish.
Hi, glad to be here.
So I was going to begin by doing a small introduction, but maybe it's better if you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about AIS.
Sure. This is, when I talk about myself, I start off by saying I'm probably one of the most fortunate guys, both personally and professionally. And on the professional side, I've been very fortunate. I got an MBA degree, and then I went to work for a Fortune 50 company in the Midwest, one of the greatest places to work in. And I learned three things there: integrity, quality, and respect for the individual. Those three things have sort of helped me as I founded my own company back in 1986. And so in that sense, that I was very fortunate to get those kinds of things in my first job. And also professionally, I've had the great fortune to learn from and to even become friends with a lot of the software people, great people. And by the way, Forrest, I used to be on the advisory board for the IEEE Software, and there again,
I knew that actually.
Yeah, and learned a lot from people like Steve McConnell and Carl Wiegers and so on that were there. And I also learned from Barry Beam, Vic Basili, and Watts Humphrey, and so on. So this has been very helpful for me as I've gone through this journey of starting a company, getting a bunch of people to come to do the software work, and trying to figuring out how can we do this with some real assurance that the end result is going to be of a very high quality and will not have any of the problems that software typically tends to have. So I'm very fortunate in that sense. And the most fortunate thing for me is the people that came and joined my organization and have worked with me. And my senior management now has been with this company for, on average, over 18 years, which is very, very high in this industry. And so I'm very, very grateful to those people that really are the ones that do the work, and I don't do the work, but I get to brag about it. So that's sort of the background about myself. The company I founded in 1986 after this career at this other Fortune 50 company, and back in the mid-'80s, there was a real problem in the Midwest, for instance, of jobs, technology jobs. And I saw an opportunity to create that by starting this company. And our early years were focused on doing work mostly like the emerging languages like C and C++, which many of the in-house staff in these corporations were not doing. They were still doing the COBOL kind of programming. So we sort of stepped in there and filled a kind of a need there for these corporations. And the company grew fairly rapidly through the 90s, through the Y2K era and so on. And then a lot of the software work went overseas. And so we had to refocus ourselves, and we went to government contracting as a way to continue to stay in business and create jobs in the U.S. And so that's what we've done since 2002 or 3. And over the last 4 or 5 years, we are seeing that the way we're doing the work is particularly helpful in modernizing a lot of the legacy applications that the government has, for instance. And so what happens when you do this work in this high-quality way, you find that the schedule and the costs are predictable, and you deliver on or out of schedule with very high quality. And getting back to the sustainment issue that you're talking about, typically what happens, at least on the government side, the majority of the maintenance spend goes towards fixing bugs. So if you do the work right and you deliver this very high quality, what we're finding is that the majority of the maintenance spend now can be directed towards new features and enhancements to keep the system running in terms of as the need and the regulations or technology changes, you can do more of the adaptive, perfective kinds of changes as opposed to just the corrective kind of changes, which is what typically happens. So, but there is a little connection in here in terms of the theme that you have for your issue, which is that the development doesn't end when you deliver the product. You still have to stay behind it, and if things go wrong, to be able to fix it.
Great, great. And I was going to say, one of the things one of the first things that I knew about AIS, and probably one of the reasons our readers would know about it as well, is that you were the winner of the IEEE Computer Society Software Process Achievement Award, if I remember right.
That is correct. That is correct, and we're most proud of that because of, as you know, the people in the committee are the greats, Barry Beam and Vic Vasili and Watson Frey and so on. And we say that we also have a CMMI level 5. We say that, and our people really, we do believe that it was a lot harder to get the Software Process Achievement Award as opposed to getting a level 5, because that's kind of the bar that they set to give the award, and so we're very proud of that.
Excellent. One of the reasons I invited you here to talk today was that I was looking at some of the talks that you've been giving recently, and when you talk about AIS and the type of work that you offer to the government, it struck me that there's a lot of terms that come up that you don't often see in this line of business. So you say things like that we offer firm fixed price contracting, that you have performance guarantees, and the one that intrigued me the most was a lifetime warranty on software defects. And I thought, you almost never see this type of guarantee or this type of certification with software of this scale, almost anywhere, in my opinion, in my experience. Could you say a little bit about why you offer that and how you do it?
Sure. It's kind of interesting because the warranty idea was something that came about for us as I've always looked at the defects that are reported post-delivery. One of the things that our teams always report to me, and it's a key indicator of how we're doing in terms of customer satisfaction. And as I was seeing where acceptance test defects were customers testing for weeks or months and still not finding anything wrong with what we delivered, after a few of those, and I did ask our teams, is this something that we can actually stand behind and tell the customer that, yeah, we will give you a product that would not have any defects in it, and it's just not talk. We will actually fix it free for the life of it. And we said for the life of it because this is not mechanical, it doesn't wear out. So as long as for the environment for which it was built stayed the same, that we could reproduce it and show that if there's an error that was caused by our work, then we said we'll fix it. And the amazing thing about that is that the impact it had on the people that are doing the work, who are really proud of what they're doing, and now they say that, yeah, we're willing to stand behind that, and we can do that. So that's where it came from, and I think the customers are really benefiting from it, not so much not only on the defect side, but also on the fact that the quality work is more predictable than poor quality work. So we're able to meet our schedule and our cost commitments consistently.
Is there something that you feel, is there a need to educate the customer? I'm assuming that something with the guarantee maybe costs a little bit more upfront than similar types of systems, but like you said, the quality is going to be there from the get-go. Is that a transition that customers have to make, or are people generally receptive to that?
There's two things, like this thing that you're mentioning about, is there going to be any upfront cost? And our feeling is that not really. And if you really look at the history of manufacturing, engineering work over the centuries even, software is the only one that seems to take the position that somehow increased quality means more cost, whereas all the other industries always found out that increased quality reduces the cost, increases the market share, and so on. So in fact, it is, and the other reason why we need to maybe get the customers to understand a little better about what benefit they're getting out of it, and again, it gets back to this question of when does development actually end? And if we don't account for the post-delivery defect fixing cost, then we can say, yeah, the development was done for a particular cost. But if you take the total life cycle cost, it certainly is lower when you have a very quality workforce and a quality process from the beginning, and the fact that from the boardroom on down as a business model, the organization says that, yeah, we will stand behind what we're delivering to you, and if you find anything wrong, we want to fix it.
Mm-hmm. I can imagine that your government customers must fall off the chair when you say that sometimes, because I think that so much of from my own experience with the U.S. government and the type of work that gets done, I mean, so often there's built-in incentives for people to do a lot of rework later because they get to bill it, they get to charge that, just as much as the upfront work. So I imagine this is a real a sea change for your government customers sometimes.
It is, but unfortunately, I don't think it has got that traction I thought it would, as you're pointing out, it would happen. So there is a little bit of this education that we have to do. The acquisition people they do enormously good work in the government, but they have lots of other pressures that they have to deal with. Cost is only one of the ones that they're dealing with. And but what this is all now coming home to roost for all of us is in the fact that the code defects are the ones that are exploited for cyber attacks by the people that don't like us. Mm-hmm. And so the defect problem has now become two things now for us. One is that for the government, the taxpayer is paying, depending on whose estimate it is, anywhere from $15 to $40 billion a year for defect fixing. Mm-hmm. But worse than that is the potential catastrophe that we could have by somebody that exploits these defects and attacks our smart grid and our financial systems and so on, which are really, really becoming major issues for us. And you may have read that the Defense Secretary, Leon Panetta, said that the next Pearl Harbor would be one of these attacks. Yeah. So it's a very serious problem, and the industry has done a marvelous job in protecting our infrastructure on the network side and the transport side and so on. But we left somebody told me, we left the front door open because the attacks are coming through by exploiting the defects in software. So I think the government is recognizing that, and Homeland Security has got a major initiative in software assurance, and they've come up with some very good ways that we in industry could use, and we're working with them to continue to improve software assurance education, software assurance methods, and so on. So I think the future is very good for companies that really want to do quality work, and particularly are able to deliver code, large systems in hundreds of thousands of lines of code systems virtually free of cybersecurity vulnerabilities. I think the future is very good for those kinds of companies.
So I want to come back to that cybersecurity idea, but I was going to ask first, so we've talked a lot about what you're able to offer, and I was going to ask if you could say a little bit about what are the technical underpinnings. I mean, how is it that AIS is able to offer these types of guarantees and is so confident about the quality of delivered systems?
Yeah,
I mean, I know that you're...
People like to... And as you can imagine, there's probably no real simple, easy answer to that question. But the one thing that I think is extremely important is that, after all the work that we do is done by human beings. So, and it is not done solo work; it's done in teams. So the crux of the matter is, how do you form a team? How do you motivate that team? And how do you manage the team, or how do you really manage them to where they can manage themselves? So it's mostly a people kind of question. The other problem that we see is that most of the times, because of time-to-market pressures, teams are forced into doing work in what we call arbitrary, unrealistic schedules.
Yes.
And when teams are forced into that situation, they typically end up what I've been calling a deliver it now, we'll fix it later kind of a culture. That's what's permeating our industry now because of this time-to-market pressure. Now, one of the ways that we overcome that is that we do not make a commitment without all the team members participating in really figuring out how long something is going to take. And then, even if it's not exactly what the customer wants, have the conviction to be able to defend their estimate as to why the schedule is longer than what the customer wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And that comes about with some real training in terms of the software individuals, the developers, being able to do some estimating, being able to create things like personal plans in terms of how they're going to do the work, to be able to track the work, and measuring and managing the quality of what they're doing. So which is really the other point that most people are probably still not making the connection, is the connection between quality and schedule. Mm-hmm. And I think because of these time-to-market pressures, the quality part of it is sort of in the background, but when in fact it's poor quality performance that causes most of the schedule problems. Mm-hmm. And then the schedule problems end up as quality disasters finally. So, so fundamentally, if the buyers and the producers come to the understanding that quality has got to be the number one goal, and quality is the one that really has the biggest bearing on schedule and cost. Mm-hmm.
That was a very interesting answer. I was going to say, as I was leading into it, that because you're a CMMI Level 5 organization, I really thought that your answer was going to be about processes and predictability and understanding, you know, the development process as well as the business. But the fact that you gave a people-centered answer was actually quite nice in my mind.
I think so. You know, like in real estate, they say location, location, location. I think
yes.
For us, it's people, people, people.
Mm-hmm.
And but the thing about process is this: the process is important, but process does have one downside to it, which is that you can do a process and you can satisfy that you're doing the process by producing some artifacts to show that your work being worked in this fashion. But the way most of these process systems work is that those artifacts are produced not by the developers, but produced by the process people. So they may have no bearing to the way the actual work is done, and we see that in many cases. So one of the ways you get around that is you make sure that the team that's going to do the work take ownership of the process, and the process actually helps them do a better job. And so it's the same idea as you don't make a commitment without the team actually being involved in making the commitment for schedule and cost. The team also has to be involved in deciding what the process it is that they're going to use to do the work. And it's really amazing to see how when people know that they have the ability to determine their planning horizon schedules and costs and the method by which they're going to do the work, it continues to amaze me as to what great work these software people can do.
Mm-hmm. So I was going to ask you a little bit more about that, too, because it struck me, on one hand, that what you're doing is very empowering. I mean, you're asking people to give inputs, you know, about the realistic schedules in which they can do the work, and also to choose things that are going to help them reach that schedule on time and with good quality. Which on one hand sounds very great, very empowering. On the other hand, I wonder if it's a little, I mean, there's a lot of developers who I've met who would not want to work at that level. You know, they're very happy, you give me the spec and I'll do the coding, that's where I really find my enjoyment. So I wonder, is this something that, does it require some education of your development staff, or does it require a certain type of person who wants to come at AIS and participate in that way, or am I being too pessimistic maybe?
It's a little of each of those, Forrest. The thing that we found was that if you can get the kind of people that are somewhat predisposed to doing work in a disciplined way, and part of the confusion that we have is this whole notion of discipline. Some of the people like to think of discipline as the parental kind of discipline, and that's not. We're not talking about that. We're talking about professional discipline, which is how do you plan your work, how do you track your work, how do you manage your defect. Defect management is a very big part of professional discipline. So if you emphasize that, then it turns out that people understand that. But the part of the reason people push back is, in many cases, I think, is that they really have not been trained to do the work in that fashion.
Absolutely. And
so what the software developers in our industry have been forced to over the years is to find their own methods that work best for them. And if you are to tell them that you need to track your time, you need to track your defects and so on, somehow that seems like it's not what I do when I'm doing software.
Exactly.
Now, one of the things that we found was very interesting lately is that we had a 17-person team that delivered almost 750,000 lines of code 4 weeks ahead of schedule with zero cybersecurity vulnerabilities in it. And the most amazing thing about the team was half of the people in that team are fresh out of college.
Wow.
So in answer to your question, if we get people before they actually go through a process where they have to find out for themselves and make the kinds of practices that they think works for them, you tell them that, no, here's some things that's going to actually help you, and help you not only in this particular project that you're working on, but allows you to actually maintain some data on your own performance and have the ability to analyze it and improve yourself. And you find that that's the way most people want to work. But you always run into some individuals that do not want to do that. And so if you have an organization culture that does that, those people get isolated very early on, and I don't think they're bad people. I don't think they're any less smart than these other people, but it's just that they don't work in this fashion like these other people are, and they move on. And we've had that in our company. People just say, I see what you're doing, but that's really not what I want to do, which is what you were asking about. But I think the truth is, in my way of thinking, is that it is not a very large percentage of people that are like that. Most people, I think, want to do very high quality work. And it's just that many of our systems and our acquisition practices and our management practices sort of come in the way of people doing that.
Yes. And I was going to ask, not that I want you to badmouth the competition necessarily, but I was going to ask why is it that so few other companies give these types of guarantees or feel this level of ownership maybe of the high quality stuff that they turn in?
What you had alluded to earlier, Forrest, which is that there really is not a real incentive for them to do that. And so when you have a whole industry where nobody is doing any better, then people are saying, why would I have to do that? So that's why we think that this whole idea of these guaranteed software quality could be a disruptive innovation. Yeah, at least it has the potential to be. And because of that, it maybe will take a little longer for broader acceptance in the marketplace, but it has the potential to be. The other reason I think is that many of the larger organizations, from their financial, accounting, and boardroom on down, will never allow them to commit themselves to doing warranty and things like that. That's the way the systems are set up. I don't think they can do that. But also, my belief is that they have not quite understood the relationship between quality and the impact it can have on their bottom lines. And so if somebody starts doing in this way, ensuring that customers can actually be assured of the kind of quality they're getting, and that when it starts to take hold, I think these companies will realize that they would be at a competitive disadvantage.
Great. Okay. And so I was going to then make the connection now back to cybersecurity again. I think that, I mean, from my point of view, not being a cybersecurity expert, trying to stand behind the quality of the code I come up with is one thing, and trying to certify that it's going to be a secure system is quite another and a much scarier proposition, actually. So I wondered how, if you could give us a little bit of a hint about how you're managing that transition to all the cybersecurity threats that are out there these days.
What we're finding is that there's a list of known problems. So you start with that to make sure that the individuals that are developing the product are aware of that, and they can build it into their own checklists of things that they have to check for in their code. And Homeland Security has done a marvelous job of creating that. U.S. CERT has done a pretty good job of identifying these common weakness enumerations and things of that nature. So there's a lot of help available to do that. But it needs to be sort of institutionalized in the way people do the work, that they actually make sure that the code doesn't have some of those kinds of things. And so what happens in our case is that we really don't use tests to find these vulnerabilities and so on. We try to take them all out before even going to test. So if you have a culture that essentially believes that you need to put the highest quality into tests so that you can get highest quality out of it, a lot of the emphasis on defect removal and so on takes place before you go into tests. And this may be one of the problems that we're seeing in the industry today, is that there continues to be this, what I think is an over-reliance on testing and tools and so on, and not emphasizing the fact that the individual should take pride in their work, and they ought to make sure that what they're putting together is essentially defect-free. And you need to provide them with the assistance in terms of what we know about defects, where they come from, and what are the common defects and so on. And I think over time that sort of gets institutionalized in the process. And that's where process could be a very, very good help. But it's institutionalized in the personal process, then what happens is, and as you can imagine, these large systems that we're building today are made up of very small individual components. So part of what we have in AIS is the notion that every component that's built by an individual should have 0 defects when it gets past the component unit test stage. And we track that metric carefully, and they report that to me. And our goal is to make sure that 80 to 90% of the components are defect-free in integration systems and acceptance testing. And we don't always get all of that. But the benefit that we get out of it is that we can somewhat predict at the end of code complete what the defect profile is going to be downstream. And that's where we get the assurance of being able to say that, yeah, we can provide warranty on this. Because if it looks like the piece was not built, and we use some very simple metrics to see, did the developer spend as much time in design as in coding? Did they spend as much time reviewing the design, at least half the time reviewing the design as they did during the design, or half the time reviewing the code as about half of the time that they spent coding it, and things of that nature? That gives us an idea that the process was very good in constructing the piece. And so if you have all of these pieces that are high quality, then the only thing that you need to worry about is the fact that you didn't miss fundamentally the integration of those components. And there you need to have very sound design practices and architecture and so on to be able to reduce those defects. So this is why and again, I think those of us that are working on the software assurance side of it are totally convinced that it has to be the whole life cycle that has to be secure. And the practices have to be from the beginning through the requirements, design, and implementation stages.
Great. Okay, I think that's about as much time as we had for today, Girish, but I wanted to say thank you. Oh, and before we end the interview, I wanted to ask, is there anything I should have asked that I didn't have a chance to today?
I think this issue is something that, by the way, I don't ever want to sound, I guess the only thing that you could have asked is that do we have any silver bullet? And the fact is, no, we don't. And there is no silver bullet solutions, and we for sure don't think that we have all the answers. Every project that we undertake, we think that could be the next humbling experience for us. So we go into each one of these very, very carefully. And so there is no such thing like that. And really fundamentally, like what you're doing in IEEE Software and so on, is the kind of stuff that needs to happen, that we as a profession, as a community, learn to do this work the right way, as all other industries have done. And software seems to be somewhat behind in reducing scrap and rework, for instance.
Great. Well, thank you again for the time, Girish. This has been a
thank
really
you very
fun
much,
conversation.
I enjoyed it, and keep up the nice work at IEEE Software.
Well, thank you. Okay, great. Thank you, Girish.
Bye.
Bye-bye.